this. I love it. This is going to be an epic morning. It's always incredible when I get to interview you, Winn Claybaugh. And if you haven't heard my interview with him on my B series yet, it's episode number 82, Be a Legacy Builder. And I tell you, he has certainly built a legacy, and he has no idea how much he's changed my family's life and how that has transferred to so many thousands and thousands of people. So Winn, thank you as usual for being on this podcast. You always say yes every time to every webinar, every mastermind, every podcast that we do. So thank you so much for being on today.
Well, it's a pleasure. And of course I'm going to say yes. You know, I did my first interview 22 years ago. So back before there was even such a thing as a podcast, I was sitting down with people and recording their answers. And the first person that I interviewed was Vidal Sassoon, because I thought, if Vidal says yes to me, who's ever going to say no? And so, yeah, 22 years ago, I said, Vidal, can I interview you? He said yes. And so why would I now come along and say no? I'm always going to say yes. I was recently interviewed by this young kid, and I said, oh, so how many of these have you done? He said, I haven't done any. You're my first. I'm like, okay. How many followers do you have? Oh, I have 3, including my mom. Okay, good. Let's do it. What's my message for mom today? So of course I'm going to say yes.
Oh, thank you so much, Winn. I can't even believe that you're even on today. I love every minute of everything that you talk about as well too. And those of you who don't know Winn Claybaugh, of course, in this industry, I always say you've been living under a rock, of course. You can go to his website, winnclaybaugh.com. And it's interesting. Actually, it would take me an hour, the whole interview, to read your bio, Winn. So I'm just going to give some highlights because it's the things that I know the most about you and the things that have changed and shaped my life as well, too. But first and foremost, he's the author of Be Nice or Else. And not many authors can say that they've written one book and become successful. And the amazing thing about that is I've got 4 books out and I'm still not successful. So I'm still working on that process. But I love the book because it's one of those books, if you haven't read it, that you can just pick it up at any time, open it up. It's like the Bible. You can open it up and it's going to speak to you in that moment. And so what an incredible book. I want to talk about that book during the interview, Winn, because people want to be authors, and everyone that I talk to thinks that they're not an author. And I want to talk about, how you were able to transfer that. But first and foremost, I want to talk about that. And you'll see very soon that he's one of the greatest motivational speakers in the entire country. And then he talked about the podcast club, which started out, get this, cassette tapes. Those of you who don't know what cassette tapes are, look it up, Google it. I had them. First time I met you, Winn, you gave me an entire set of your disc tapes. And it's the first time I had ever listened to motivational tapes was you. And I listened to you over and over and over again and studied you and what you had to talk about. In fact, you remind me so much of Anthony Robbins, of just your message that you give as well. And then he was on NAHA, North American Hairstyling Awards, youngest person ever named to the Hall of Leaders, which I think is incredible in itself. And I'm not surprised at all. And my most favorite thing about you, Winn, as you know, because I get to serve with you on the Andrew Gomez Dream Foundation board, is that we have raised over $21 million in the Paul Mitchell School franchise. And the mere fact that you were named one of the top, I believe, 50 fastest growing franchises in America, which is incredible in itself. And I do want to talk about that during the interview too, Winn, because I know a lot of salons want to scale their business, and some of them are thinking about franchising or doing corporate owned, that sort of thing. So I want to talk about that as well through this process. Everyone on here is either a salon owner or a salon leader. And so many of them are on live today. We have quite a few on today. And then many of them are listening to the recording as well too. So first, let's talk about your book, because where did that come from and why did you write it? And why should everyone be an author of their story?
First of all, I think the best teachers, the best leaders, the best parents are storytellers. We tell our own stories, and we tell the stories of our heroes and our mentors, and that's how we learn, that's how we grow. So I think that everybody should be a storyteller. You tell stories to your children, you tell stories to your grandchildren, to your team, Sometimes it's one-on-one, and sometimes you're telling stories in front of thousands of people. And those stories absolutely have impact for people. And my story, the reason why I started telling my story in the form of a book, first of all, it didn't start off as a book. It was me journaling, because 18 years ago, I became clean off of drugs. And so that was like that pivotal point in my life where, okay, well, who am I now? What do I believe in now? I obviously had to completely reinvent my life. I had to divorce myself from the life that I had before. I had to divorce myself from relationships, from friendships, to be able to keep myself safe. How I like to put it is I love myself enough to stay away from those people, to stay away from those triggers, to stay away from those circumstances that led to that type of a lifestyle. And so the process of me trying to figure out who I am and what I stand for, what I believe in now, it was journaling. It was sitting down to write those thoughts and write those beliefs. And in that process of writing, it wasn't to be a book. In that process, I've always been somebody who shares my thoughts and what I'm going through. I'm not the type of person that does things on my own. If I go to the gym, I want 5 people to come with me. I'm always taking a team, a group of people with me wherever I go. And so when I was writing down my thoughts, journaling about my belief system and what I stand for, where I plan to go, I started sharing those thoughts with different people. A very small handful of people, I would send to them a story. Hey, I just wrote this in my journal. What do you think of this? And that process of sharing the information, some people responded back and said, you know what, this is good stuff. Maybe this should be a book. At the same time, we had just launched the Paul Mitchell School franchise, the network. We opened up our first school 20 years ago. In January, it'll be 20 years ago. And it was also that process of writing down our systems, our culture, because it's easy to be a successful leader if you only have one location. Where you show up to that one location, you're physically in the building every single day. You can even pull that off with 2 or 3 locations where you drive from one location to the next. And so your team sees you every day, stuff comes up and you're physically in the building to handle it. But what if you're not physically available in the building? Does that mean that things fall apart because you're not there? Your culture, your belief system, what you stand for isn't strong because you're not physically in the building. And so I knew that that would not be the case, that I physically would not be in the buildings of all these Paul Mitchell schools that we were opening up, because I think we opened up 100 locations within 10 years. So we had to write it down. We had to write down who we are, what's our culture stand for, how do we do things around here, so that if I'm physically not in the building, our culture still is alive and strong. When I interviewed the president of Outback Steakhouse, he says that now, again, 650 locations around the world, very, very strong culture. He said, we have yet to receive a letter from a happy customer saying, I love Outback Steakhouse because of the president. He said, we have yet to receive that letter, meaning the reason why customers are happy, because he physically cannot be in 650 locations, but the standards can be. The systems of how we do things around here, those can be in every single location, and it's not dependent upon a person. It's what's written down. And so that was also the process of writing my book. It was writing down our systems of who we are, and all of that combined together eventually became a book.
I love it. And when let's talk about that a little bit more, because we spent an entire month, Sean and I, who's my co-host, by the way, who couldn't be on because he's on airplane this very moment, but we talk about this with salon owners, and we'll ask them, do you have any systems written down? And they'll say, no. Okay, great. Okay, so let's get started. So talk to that salon owner right now. How can they get that process started? Because that's the one biggest thing that you ever taught me as a business owner, because I didn't know that at all. The first time I opened a salon, when I didn't even pay attention to what you were teaching me, the second time around, I finally woke up and paid attention and realized that I needed to write all my systems. And I remember you said to us, it's a list of all my screw-ups. And so we screwed up this past year on communication. We hadn't even talked about gossip and what that was when. And so I actually had to write an entire system, what gossip was and what it wasn't, and how to get rid of it and how to hold each other accountable to that, again, over and over and over. So talk about that process, get someone started so that they can scale the business through that process.
Okay, first of all, again, if you don't have systems, and a system is defined as this is how we do things around here. If you do not have a system, your business is going to fall apart. Meaning, if how you run the front desk in your salon in your business is only in the head of your receptionist, well, that person leaves on vacation for 2 weeks. What happens to the front desk? Everything falls apart. The bookings fall apart. The money falls apart. Customer service falls apart. How you answer the phone, a complaining guest, all of that just completely falls apart. Why? That one person is on vacation, or they quit, they go someplace else, right? So everything has to be written down. Everything has to be written down. How you answer the phone has to be written down. This is how we answer the phone, and we all answer the phone the exact same way. I like to give the analogy that if you get a job at McDonald's, you can't show up with your own version of how to cook a hamburger. And you can buy a McDonald's hamburger on the East Coast or on the West Coast. It's the same hamburger. There has to be that consistency. And if you write that word down, consistency is just so important to running and building a successful business. So you ask, how does somebody get that process started? First of all, steal from other sources. We like to say if you're doing research, that means you're stealing from everybody. And so I would say 99% of the ideas and the information that I shared came from somebody else. Maybe 1% was inspiration, divine revelation that came to me. Hey, Winn, here's a great idea. But the rest I borrowed from other people. I built relationships with the successful salon down the street, the successful school down the street, the mentor who worked at Nordstrom's or whatever. So you can borrow and steal from other sources of what your employee manual needs to look like, of what your systems need to look like. But beyond that, also to get together with your own team. Hey team, what does our dress code look like? First of all, who's the customer that we want to attract? Okay, we want to make money. We want to charge more for our services. That means we have to look the part because, people don't like to give money to people who look like they don't have any money. And so, okay, so based on that, we all want to raise our prices. What should our dress code look like? And then together as a team of people, 10 people all get together and they write down the dress code. This is what's appropriate. This is what's not appropriate. So there's all kinds of ways that you go about creating that system, creating that manual, whatever you want to call it, but it all has to be written down.
Yeah, and it's got to be that living, breathing document too, that you can have the ability to be able to make shifts and changes in it as well too, but making sure that you constantly train. I love what you always say, train, 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 sustain, sustain, sustain. So keep talking about it over and over. And I notice a lot of salon owners that we coach when many times they'll have a system, but it hasn't been brought out in a long time. It's full of a lot of dust, So what would that look like? And how can you make it come alive again and keep reliving it over and over and over? In fact, what we'll do is we give out awards for different culture awards every month to keep our values alive, which is really awesome. You dropped a bomb a minute ago, and I think we need to talk about this because it is a shift and change challenge that salon owners and leaders have, and that is dress code. I don't know why we're constantly revisiting this when over and over, even in our own schools. And you said something, people don't like to give money to people who don't look like they have any money. Talk about that, because that's pretty huge. And I think it's almost another class that we could teach our stylists.
If this is going almost exclusively out to the salon business, leasing a space in a salon suite is very, very prominent. And people say, cool, I work for myself now. And the cool part about that is I can show up when I want. I can leave when I want. I can dress however I want. Okay, that's great. Here's the deal. Your customer does not care how people are compensated. The customer doesn't care that this is a booth rental salon, a individual lease arrangement where employees maybe are salaried or commissioned. The customer does not care. how you are compensated in the salon. What they do care about is the experience that they're going to have. And a big part of that experience, obviously, is image. You know, we're in the image business, right? I like to say that, you know, people who don't want to look the part, you know, when I just don't like wearing makeup, I'm like, well, then be a nurse. You know, but you've chosen the professional beauty industry. You have to look the part. Again, like I said, you know, I'm sitting at home, right? But I knew that I needed to present myself in the proper way. So of course I need to look the part, and all of us need to look the part. So you guys just, it's as much as you want to have freedom. It's funny that you'll look better when you're dressed up to go out on Friday night than you will look for your customers, than how you present yourself to your customers. So I'm just putting it out there. If you do want to make a lot of money, you know, if you do want a price increase, and by the way, we like to say that people who don't care to make more money would lie about other things as well. But if that is on your wish list to make more money and raise your prices, well, look in the mirror. Why don't you just start there? Just start looking the part. It's just such a simple thought, and yet people resist it so much.
So good. And I think, you know, again, I think looking into the psychology of why people spend more money with people who look like they make money, I think it's really important to study that psychology and teach your future professionals, teach your students, teach your stylists that as well. And I think that's a huge topic that you brought up, Winn. But let's also talk about something that you kind of dropped another bomb, which I think is really awesome, because, you know, I've had staff members that have left our salon, and kudos to them. They felt it was the best idea for them is to go into that salon suite. And so I started really looking in the mirror and thinking, how could I be a better leader so I don't lose somebody as great as them? We just lost somebody incredible in our salon. And you said leasing is becoming a very prominent space. And I heard his numbers up to 60%, right? And so a lot of the salon owners say to me, Tina, how can I keep these stylists so they don't leave? What's your advice there, Winn, for leadership principles, as well as making sure you set up a great culture system in your salons?
Okay, a couple of things. First of all, people leave. Okay, so just realize that people are going to leave. You can do
Get over it.
everything. If I said that there were 10 things that every salon owner had to do to guarantee that people are never going to leave, and you could check all 10 of those boxes, and you did that, guess what? They're still going to leave. And so, you know, I remember a good friend of mine, a very successful salon owner, said that she finally just had to stop, you know, crying over the fact that people leave. Because every time somebody left, she would call me, oh my God, this is terrible. You know, how many times you want to put yourself through this? It's going to happen. So just realize it's going to happen. That doesn't mean that you can't do certain things to make sure that the customer is more loyal to the salon than they are to the stylist. And yes, there's things that you can implement to make that happen. You know, maybe sometimes the salon has the wherewithal to offer a better customer experience than that stylist who is working by themselves, renting a salon suite. You know, when it comes to, you know, the greeting, as they say, it takes a village. And so if that entire salon village, you know, 10 people are part of the process of making sure that one customer is happy and receiving the wonderful experience, everything from the music to the cleanliness to how they're greeted to handling a customer complaint to the image of the entire team, right? If all of that is in place and one stylist does decide to leave to go rent their own salon suites, again, congratulations, you know, leave with dignity. You know, don't sneak around, don't steal client records, and don't steal ideas. You know, so if you're going to leave, just leave with dignity, right? So, but if they do leave, how I like to see it, you know, it's fair game. You know, to the salon owner, hey, wish them well, wish that stylist well, but let them know, hey, I'm going after your client just as much as you're going to go after your client. You know, I'm going to do everything I can to help retain them, to keep them in the salon, make sure they're serviced by other team members who are still employed at the salon. But I absolutely wish you well. I wish you well. So not sure if I answered your question or not, but it's going to happen. Yeah. So just do what you need to do.
I love that you said that, and something that I've been doing, Winn, and I've been training salon leaders to do as well, is train your team how to leave. too. And so I've actually sat down with our salon owners and said that, you know, leave with dignity, like let us bless you in that process so that, you know, you leave a place better than you found it, and let us bless you because we have a different type of system set up, and that is to be able to retain our stylists to become our partners. So we actually hire future partners, not employees in our salons. And so we've been able to scale because of that win. And it's been really incredible. But for whatever reason, this one stylist said, no, I don't want to do that. And so she did. She left incredibly well. We still keep in touch, and she's still friends with the stylist. It's really beautiful to be able to watch, but there has been times in the past that it didn't work out that way. And I know we have a lot of salon owners on here that have the same struggles and same, you know, situations. And I love that. But you also hit something when that I want to talk about, because I keep talking about it in podcast after podcast, is a lot of solopreneurs, right? We call it, there's a difference between a solopreneur where you only make money when you're doing the work. And I'll ask our future professionals when I meet them, hey, do you want to make money only when you're doing the work, or do you want to make money while you're sitting on the beach? And all of them say on the beach, but then they become solopreneurs through that process because you said something, they want more freedom. And I started thinking, do you really have more freedom? Because I don't know about you, Winn, I don't have a lot of freedom because 24/7, I'm thinking about my businesses. I love every minute of it, and I went and change it for the world. But is it really freedom? I mean, what are we really talking about here?
Yeah, it depends on you know what you're building towards. I'm still hustling. I'm 61 years old. I started my company almost 40 years ago. I am still hustling. The phone does not ring. And I tell that to people, don't ever expect the phone to ring. It's you make things happen for yourself. When I interviewed David Wagner for Masters, he told me that his salons were voted the best salons in the Twin Cities for the last 10 years in a row. And I said to him, I said, David, that's incredible. I said, who voted? He said, I did. And so if we want to make things happen, you know, look ahead in the future. And so I get it. You know, maybe you're in your 20s or in your 30s and you want the freedom to bounce around and change, you know, this career to that career, or this location to that location, you know, okay. But at some point you're going to have a family. At some point you're going to think about the future. At some point you're going to want to buy a house. At some point you're going to want to buy your mom a house. At some point you're going to want to set up a legacy. Okay. And I believe that you need other people to do that. To do all of those things, to be successful in all of those things, you need partnerships. You need other people. I don't know one successful person who has achieved all that success all on their own. However you define success, whether it's as a parent, as a human being, financially in business, however you define success, I don't know one successful person who has achieved all of that success on their own. You need other people, and you leverage that with other people. So by the way, it has to be an even exchange. Okay, it can't be, you know, one person who's winning all the time financially and the other ones are not. There has to be that wonderful exchange. But, you know, to build partnerships with other people to where, like you say, one day, yeah, I do have the freedom. I'm still hustling, I'm still working hard, but yeah, I do have the freedom that if I wanted to blow off everything for the next 2 weeks, I could do that. Somebody gave me that great advice many years ago. They said that they would rather make money based on who they know and what they know rather than for what they did. And at the point when they shared that information with me, the only way that I made money was if I personally worked, meaning if I physically got on a plane to go work someplace, that's the only way that I made money. Well, now, again, I could blow off the next 2 weeks or the next 2 years and I would still make money. But that's taken a lot of work, a lot of hustling, creating wonderful relationships and partnerships on every single level with tons and tons of people.
Oh my gosh. You hit, okay, so in the beginning, obviously, there was not much freedom because, you know, you were hustling and hustling. You had to be present in your building and all the time. And we talked about this a million times because you would teach us as school owners, you better be in your business. Until you're able to not be in your business, you better be in your business. Then you can just work on your business, right? And so I love what you said, having partnerships is everything, right? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go go far, go with others, period. And that's what you've done. And that's why you've been this incredible legacy builder. And I know it's come with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears through your part, Winn, and we've all watched you. I had to study the John Maxwell leadership in order to become a leader anywhere near like you, and I'm still in that process. And so I love that about you. Have you become the leader that you are? And I know you invest in yourself too. And of course, your podcast that you did, the Masters, you were the smart one years ago that had been doing these podcasts for many, many years. And so talk a little bit about that and talk into the salon owners, how they can become that incredible leader that they need to be.
Okay. First of all, the minute that you say you are the leader, i.e. you have the title, you are the person whose name is on the lease for that building, you're the boss, whatever you want to call it. The second that you decide that you want to do that, you are now a target. You are a target. Tina, I know that you have experienced great heartache. You know, recently you and I were texting at 2 a.m, you know, because guess what? You're a target and you put yourself out there, and sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't get it so right. And we take the blow for that. Even when we get it right, we're still the target. So, and I'm sharing this is probably a different message or a different answer had you asked me that question a couple of months ago. But right now, there's a lot of fear on this planet, not just in the salon industry. There's a lot of fear on this planet. And fear, by the way, has many, many faces. Fear has the face of anger. So there's a lot of very angry people right now. They're angry because of COVID. They've lost jobs. They can't go to work. They have to homeschool. Many have lost their loved ones. There's a lot of anger because of the death of George Floyd and the civil unrest and all things Black Lives Matter. And so there's a lot of reasons why people are angry, and we need to understand that. We absolutely need to understand that. So the reason why my answer would be different today than it would be a couple of months ago is that now is not the time for any leader to go silent. Now is not the time for any leader to not be as visible as they possibly can. You know, because as leaders, we're human beings. And so this is a scary time for us as well. If we are the boss, if we are the ones who have mortgaged our homes to be able to be business owners, it's a scary time for us. It's scary financially. It's scary for our family, for our kids, for our safety, for, you know, all our health, all kinds. It's scary for us too. And a lot of bosses, a lot of leaders want to retreat, right? They want to disappear. You know, let somebody else handle this. You know, I'll have my manager handle this. No, you guys, if you thought you could be in semi-retirement, if you thought you could be on the golf course during this, if you thought that this was a time that you could just have somebody else represent you, I'm telling you right now, it's a big, big mistake. You need to be front and center. You need to be as visible as you possibly can. And by the way, your visibility, the reason why you are front and center is not to, you know, fan the flames of disharmony and fear, because we don't need more of that, right? We need people who are coming along with the solution. The opposite of fear is love. You guys, it's that simple. There's fear and there's love. If fear is present, and again, fear has the face of anger. Fear has the face of bad manners. Fear has the face of division, a lack of unity. Fear has the face of settling for less. So there are people who 3 months ago were part of your team and they were gangbusters and they were your top visionaries and they were incredible. And now they're fence sitters or even resistors. Now they have given up on their dream a little bit, right? Well, we need to be so present for those people. We need to be present from a political point of view. And I don't mean choosing sides, because that's not who we are. We do that in our privacy. In our private moments, you know, you can absolutely have those debates and have those conversations. But you guys, publicly, what leaders do, and by the way, I think I'm talking to everybody here, right? You don't have to have the title or the position to be a leader, because leader is about influence and everybody has influence. What all of us need to do right now is to be visible and be visible with the solution. The solution is love. The solution is unity. We can be on separate sides of the fence politically, religiously, and in all kinds of ways. But when we come together, and that's what leaders do, leaders bring people together. They unite. They bring about the solution. There was a popular saying in the 60s that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I really believe that. You know, if you could step back and say, well, I'm not commenting. Well, then you're not part of the solution. You know, I've gone silent right now. I'm not posting anything right now. First of all, be careful what you're posting, be careful what you're putting out there, but you can't be silent. You need to be visible and vocal, and how you're vocal, how you're visible is with the solution. And the solution is love. And by the way, love has many faces as well. So we need to learn, what are the faces of love? What's the behavior of love, which will bring about unity?
Wow. Winn, this is so great. So what is the behavior of love? So let's talk about this, because I think one of the biggest platforms, especially we have right now, of course, is social media, and it's free. So what does that look like? I mean, if you don't know, follow Winn Claybaugh, because he's constantly showing love. And I love the stance that JPMS and Paul Mitchell Advanced Education has taken on Black Lives Matter. And I think it's incredible, and it's a great policy to follow. So talk a little bit about that, Winn, and what that looks like on social media, what the face of love looks like. And I love the fact that you said, I want to be vulnerable right now, because you said about being visible and transparent. The first 2 days when COVID hit, I was like, oh, I couldn't even talk to my staff. Like, I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I got brave, and I did a little video and sent it to all of my students and all of my staff. And then I got better, and I got on Zoom calls, you know, just baby steps, a little bit at a time, because I was having that fear too, right? I'm a human being. And so that once I did it, but once you do it, then you get braver and braver, and you build confidence, you know, with that as well. It's just like speaking on stage. The first time you do it, you're scared to death, you know, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. And you're right, as a leader, you can't be silent, and it's so important. I'm so glad that I haven't, but what is the answer? It's love. And you taught me that years ago. By the way, that's our number one value that we hire in our salons is love. And so you taught me this, whatever the question, the answer is love. So what does that look like? And you're right. I don't always get love right. I get it wrong sometimes, and I have to go back and apologize and say, I got this wrong, and, you know, please forgive me. And you've taught me that too. Can we start over? You know, how many times have we had to do that? I think honestly, you might've saved my marriage with my husband of 33 years. And so I love that about you. But talk a little bit about, what does that behavior look like on social media? Because I think right now, especially, we're just, as a whole country, we're getting it wrong. And what can we do better?
Okay. When I say that leaders need to be visible, I'm not saying that you have to be visible with the answer. Mm-hmm. I don't have the answers. Sometimes I do when it comes to, you know, simple things, but I'll say in the last 2 or 3 months, you know, I don't really have the answer, but I need to humble myself and listen. So the best advice that I can give people right now is, it's very attractive when a leader can come forward and say, you know what, I don't have the answer, but I know who knows, or I'm humble enough to learn. I just want to ask questions, especially with all things Black Lives Matter. I didn't need to come out with a video immediately and say, okay, you guys, here's the answer. Here's what needs to happen. In fact, had I done that, would not have been a good thing at all, because it would have been a fraud. It would have been a front. It would have been just whatever, would not have worked. What I needed to do was to, again, be visible. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And I want to be part of the solution. I don't really know what that means. I don't know what that looks like. I am a white man with privilege. What do I need to learn? What do I need to understand about your experience? So I just needed to listen. And there's just something, again, very, very attractive about a leader that is just willing to learn and to listen. And so anytime that I did put something out, it was not a knee-jerk response. So if I put something out, you better believe I put thought and energy and lost sleep, and I called my mentors, and I humbled myself, and I learned, and then I put something out. Because you put out that knee-jerk response to anything. Have a fight with your spouse and make a decision on divorce right then and there, rather than let's take a breather. Let's go sleep in separate bedrooms, or let's resolve it right now, or let's just remind each other that we really love each other, and all this other stuff doesn't really matter when it compares to the fact that we made a commitment to each other many, many years ago. Take that breather and make sure that you're surrounded by the right people. And so if we're talking about what's been going on in the last 2 or 3 months, I have learned more and experienced more as a student in the last 3 months than probably in the last 10 years combined. And that feels really, really good, because remember, I have a career where people pay me for my opinion. People pay me to hear what I think, what I have to say. I get upwards of $10,000 to stand on a stage and speak for an hour to share my ideas and my opinion. People pay me for that opinion, right? So I'm used to that, right? I'm used to, oh, well, I have the answers. No, I don't. I really don't. And I needed to just, they get emotional about it. Emotional in a good way, because I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that I get to be part of this, that what's happening is happening in my lifetime, and I get to be a part of that. But that comes with a lot of responsibility. So just, leaders, just come on, take it. Surround yourself by the right people, because when you are a target, Tina, I knew that what you needed at 2 a.m. was not me to blast you with the system, right? I didn't need to blast you and say, Tina, oh boy, what I needed to do was, hey, Tina, I'm here for you. I bet this is tough right now. I bet what you're going through is really, really difficult. So I want to make sure that I'm surrounded by those people who can offer that to me. So come on, Winn, this is tough. Buck up, put on your big girl panties. Here's some information. Here's some knowledge. Look at it from this angle. Now get back out there, Winn. Get back out there. Control that platform that you have and send out a message of love that's going to help unite people.
I love it. And so talk to the salon owners, and I love what you're saying, Winn, because that's exactly what I did. I took your advice and I ran with it. And I just said, I'm going to call up all my closest friends who are Black and just shut up and listen. And I did a couple podcast episodes with them. And I was like you, I was just stunned. I was mad at myself. I was angry at myself through the process, not knowing that. But then I started to step in and say, I'm just going to educate myself. And I love that you said that. And so talk to the salon owner right now that still has gone silent, that isn't taking a stand. And again, I think it goes back to, call up your friends that, are Black and just ask them, what is it like being Black in America? And I've gotten a lot of different answers, of course, Winn, from so many different people. I've talked to my students, I've talked to my staff members, a lot of different answers across the board, but just saying, I'm here for you. I want to be a part of the solution. Can you help me? What can we do better? And that's what I love about you, Winn, because you're like, we just can be better. And JPMS said we can be better, and starting to take steps and action steps towards that. So what advice do you give, and what action steps are you taking right now?
Okay. First of all, you have to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just put something out there because this is now good for business. So, be very transparent and be very authentic. And see what everybody else is doing too. That's what Walt Disney said. Look around, see what everybody else is doing, and then you can move forward based on that. And so, I did check out social media. I did check out major companies that I admire, whether that was, well, I'm not going to name any, but you have to see what everybody else is putting out there. Now go and see what we put out there. So last week I released a 12-minute video. You think that I wrote the script for that video by myself? Heck no. There's no way that I am smart enough or have the ego to think that I'm smart enough to put out a statement that is going to land the way it needs to land. Okay. And so I reached out to certain people and I got that input. On Juneteenth, and again, I didn't create this list, but people help me create the list. On Juneteenth, we released a list of of movies that you can watch, documentaries that you can watch, podcasts that you can listen to, books that you can read. And so I haven't made my way through that entire list, but I'm checking things off the list, right? I'm educating myself. I've got books, sitting around here. I've watched the documentaries and the films to get a different perspective, which is why I say I've grown, or I've learned more in the last month than I have in the previous 10 years combined. So just do your homework, do your homework. And by the way, once you do decide what you're going to put out there, and you do need to put something out there, once you do decide what you're going to put out there, let somebody else see that. Let a couple of other eyes, see that before you put it out there, and to make sure that it's the right thing. We don't have to have all the answers, and to think that you do have all the answers, that's ego. And ego is so unattractive right now. It's just so, leadership is not about, I have all the answers. And again, that's just unattractive.
I love that. I want to talk a little bit more about ego, because one of the things that we teach in our month of hiring, of course, and it also starts with foundation. And so what types of people do we want to hire for our companies? And we talk about, it's a book called The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. And he talks about, it's real simplified version of a hiring plan, and it's humble, hungry, smart. And I think so many times people get confused what humility really is, And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because you lead the process so well, Winn, for all of us Paul Mitchell School owners, of you don't have to have all the answers. Just find people that do have the answers, right? And get around higher minded thinkers. But I think ego kind of gets in the way. And I know it's for any industry. I've been in dentistry. My husband has been a lawyer, and now we're in the hair industry. So ego is everywhere, right? But where does that face come from, ego? And then also, how do you get rid of that? And how do you identify if you have that ego going on in your life right now?
Okay, well, again, ego will, if you're a boss or a teacher or a leader, ego will close the minds of learning in your employees, in your students. Nobody wants to learn. So you're standing up in a staff meeting, a staff training, a staff huddle, and you're coming from a place of ego. You just closed their walls. Nobody wants to learn or gain. Even if you have something brilliant to say, when you're coming from a place of ego, nobody wants to learn from you. So, and ego is not, it's not about self-love. I mean, self-love is the opposite of ego. Self-love is confidence, and that draws people in. Here's how you know the difference. If you're in the presence of someone coming from a place of ego, they want you to feel good about whom? About them. But when you're in the place of someone who is coming from confidence and self-love, they want you to feel good about yourself. In fact, you do feel good about yourself when you are in the presence of someone who's coming from a place of self-love and true confidence. And so some people think that ego is the same as confidence. It's not. It's the exact opposite. Ego is the face of a lack of confidence. And so you say, how do you overcome that ego? Education and knowledge. Anytime that you are not knowledgeable or skillful, you come from a place of insecurity. And when you are then, well, I'm the boss, they expect that I have the answers. I don't have the answers, but I'll pretend that I do, right? So I'm coming from a place of insecurity. I don't have knowledge and experience, but I'm going to pretend that I do. That's ego. That's ego. And that, again, is so unattractive. So my answer to that is, again, educate yourself. And by the way, you're never going to graduate. You are never going to graduate from this stuff. There's never going to come a time when you can say, you know what, I don't need to read another book. I don't need to listen to another podcast. I don't need to have another life experience. Oh my gosh. My 93-year-old mother, visiting her last week, drove to Utah to visit her. She's doing great, right? But of course, at 93, oh my gosh, this is what I'm learning right now. This is what I'm experiencing right now. Right? She doesn't have to get in the car and drive to work and deal with COVID on that level. People aren't marching on her street and burning down buildings around. That's not happening, but she's still experiencing something that she's learning from. So that's I know 18-year-olds who already know it all. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
And that's unattractive.
It is unattractive. And so just, ask people around you, like, what are your blind spots? We're talking about this in our mastermind tonight when to salon owners, and I'm going to talk to them about blind spots. In fact, I just listened to this podcast, which was incredible. He said, how about if we start a weakness binder, a weakness assessment, and ask the people around you, hey, what are my weaknesses? But hey, here's the question. Like, do you know them? Do you know what your weaknesses are, and expose that to your team and have them hold you accountable to them? And something I love about you, Winn, because we talk a whole month in Next Level Salon Leadership, Sean and I, about communication, fixing your communication. And something you've taught me over and over and over again, because leaders are repeaters, is always go in asking, and instead of going and telling and attacking. And so talk a little bit about that, Winn, because I know, especially right now in 2020, there's going to be a lot. Watching this even with my own team, right? They're so busy. I had my top stylist just did $8,100 last week, and I'm excited for her, but I'm also nervous for her because I want to make sure her and I are still communicating. I don't want to lose sight with her. I don't want her to be so exhausted that she collapses, right? And so it's like, okay, let's reduce these hours. You're working too many hours right now. I get it. But let's talk about that. So what does communication look like to you, and what should it look like in a salon, especially right now, because everybody's so busy doing, and they're going to get caught back up into, their old habits of not communicating. How important is communication?
I like to say that anytime that there's a problem in a salon or any kind of a business, that problem came up because relationships broke down. And the reason why relationships break down is because there's a lack of communication. End of story. It's not like our relationship, you and I, Tina, it's not like our relationship broke down because you decided to become a jerk all of a sudden, right? Our relationship broke down because we stopped communicating. The same thing would happen in your marriage. Your marriage falls apart. Why? We're not communicating. And so communication is all about, this is how we sustain a healthy relationship. And when there are not healthy relationships in a salon environment, you don't think that the customer picks up on that? You don't think that other team members pick up on that, right? If you and Brian were fighting, or you and Sean, your other partners in the business, are fighting all the time, you don't think the employees pick up on that? You guys, I have a little guest that,
hi, Sophia.
Here we're at home, right? All of us are at home. And so we have other wonderful guests that get to share in this space with all of us. We call her Toothless. So she lost 2 teeth during quarantine, and she learned how to ride a bike and make perfume and blow up the kitchen and build tents all over the house. And you know what? I always said I wanted more time with my daughter. Guess what? I got it. So, right.
Pretty soon we'll be interviewing her for a podcast, Winn.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Actually, she has some topics right now that she could totally take control over, like animal health and rescue, and the importance of, oh my gosh. She's got her little opinion. We always said that we wanted to, if we're going to have a girl, we want her to have a strong opinion. We want her to have boundaries and be independent. Guess what? We got that. We got one of those. So what a journey.
I love it. One of these days, we're going to have you write a book on how to be a great parent. Very proud of you guys.
Again, that would be a huge collaboration of lots and lots of people to help through that process.
I love that you said sustaining a healthy relationship. And it is, and so let's talk about that. What should that look like in a salon business? First of all,
well, in the salon business, it's, we are very, very busy. All of us are very, very busy. And so if you say, hey, we'll communicate when we find the time for that. That's like saying, I'll go to the gym whenever I'm in the mood. You'll never go to the gym, right? You'll never go to the gym. I had a friend of mine recently tell me that she is 10 years sober, but only 2 years into recovery. And what I got out of that was, even though she wasn't drinking, she wasn't using, for 8 years, right? She still wasn't doing the work, right?
Yeah.
2 years into recovery means, now I got to do the work that goes along with sustaining sobriety. The same thing applies to your businesses. The same thing applies to your marriage, right? So your businesses, again, what sustains a successful business. And when I say successful, I'm talking about profitability. What sustains a successful business are successful relationships. And that does not happen by accident. So yes, you're going to be busy. That's the goal, is that everybody is busy. That's the goal, is that everybody's having $8,000 weeks, right? That's what you want to have happen. That's what you want as a salon owner. That's what the stylist wants to have. We all want to make more money, and that's great. That's because that's the only way that we're able to go on and do good things in our communities. If we can't pay our rent, how can we, do a cancer walk, right? So we need financially strong, sane salon businesses. And one of the very important ways of how we sustain that is with relationships, and how you sustain healthy relationships is through communication. And so how we communicate, obviously there's a fun way of communications. And so it's the parties, it's the barbecues, it's the outings, all that's important too. But you also have to have the conversations that relate to running a successful business. And so we have daily huddles, so there's a 20-minute huddle that happens in every single Paul Mitchell school every single day, and sometimes twice a day, another one for night school. And so we have weekly management meetings. We have monthly, what we call town halls, and those are scheduled. Like we say, we'll have the huddle if we all have the time. No, we're going to have the huddle every single morning at this time. It's going to last for 20 minutes, because that's the other thing. People say, well, Winn says we should have a lot of meetings. And so they have a 3-hour meeting with 10 people. And sometimes they say, well, that was 3 hours of wasted time. I'm like, no, it was 30 hours of wasted time, because you had 10 people there at 3 hours each, right? So you have to make sure that you're organized. How long is it going to last? You start on time, you end on time. We're going to talk about this. We do not talk about that. That's a private conversation, one-on-one or with a small management team of people. So that conversation is not allowed in this 20-minute huddle. We're also going to use the proper words. There are words that we use. There are words that we do not use. Just as the Ritz-Carlton and Nordstrom's, they have language, they have words, they have scripts that they all follow. And that's for a reason, right? Well, we need to apply that to how we communicate as well. And so, how much have we released on the importance of what a successful staff huddle looks like? Oh my gosh, we've had from our gathering guidelines to full-on trainings that are only about this is how we come together and this is how we communicate.
Yeah, we have led the way so well. And I think let's talk about that, because I see this so much with salon owners. They'll tell me, oh my gosh, we had a meeting and it turns into a bitch fest, where everybody's complaining and then everything's falling apart by the end of the meeting. And so I love that you said you're super intentional and super strategic about what you're conversing about. And so talk a little bit about that, what that should look like, because I think that was really powerful what you said, Winn, of not talking about problems, right? So talk a little bit to the salon owner that's like, okay, what should we talk about? How do I get strategic in this manner?
Okay, well, as the leader, and this should, again, go to everybody, as a leader, you have to realize that you're always in a position. You're either the seller or you're the buyer. Okay, so stylist, you're either the seller or you're the buyer. Right? So if you're the buyer in the relationship with your guest tells you, no, I don't need hair color. No, I don't need to use your professional salon, your professional hair products. So the customer is selling you and you're buying, oh yeah, you're right. You don't need my shampoo. You don't need hair color. Who's the seller and who's the buyer? As a leader, you're either the seller or you're the buyer. And as leaders, we have to sell to people. We sell to them love. This is how we unite. We sell to them professionalism. We sell to them, this is the dress code. You do that as a parent. How many times a day do I have to negotiate with my daughter to sell her, no, this is what we eat for breakfast. We don't eat that for breakfast. I don't care if Zoe eats that for breakfast. We don't have the same last name as Zoe has, right? In our household, this is what we eat for breakfast. And so we're always selling. Are you the seller or are you the buyer? So in a staff huddle, when you're bringing people together for 20 minutes or for 1 hour, somebody's the seller and somebody's the buyer. As a leader, you better make sure that you are the seller. You control the room. You control the air. You control the lighting. You control how the chairs are set up. Set them up in a circle. You control the topics. You control the conversation. So you have to sell all of that. And what we have done behind the scenes is to do everything that we can to make sure that you're set up to win. And so get your hands on the gathering guidelines. They're printed in my book. There's a poster size on my website that you can, download and print for free. Have that hanging poster size in the room whenever you have that staff gathering. And so the team can see, oh, it says right up there that we can't use the word problem, right? We don't have problems here. What we have are suggestions, and we have to have two solutions. I can't voice my problem without at least two solutions. The boss here, the leader, is requiring that I assume responsibility, personal responsibility for the success of this culture, this environment. I can't just show up to this team huddle and dump my problems on other people. I have to be part of the solution. And so just get your hands on the, what are there? There are 10, right? There's 10 gathering guidelines.
So good.
Follow the 10 gathering guidelines. It's that basic. It's that simple. And anytime that people call and say, oh my gosh, it fell apart, it did turn into a bitch session, I'm like, did you follow the guidelines? Did you follow? And oh gosh, we forgot about the 10 gathering guidelines. Remind people, hey, you guys, we're going to start this meeting. Before we get into this meeting, let's all review the 10 gathering guidelines here.
Yeah.
Let's set ourselves up for success here.
Yeah, and sometimes even a few years later, if you've been doing them, revisit them again and again and again. If you start to notice it, you have to watch your people. You have to see if this is happening or not. I love the fact that you even zeroed in your systems to details about a staff meeting. And one of my favorite parts of that is there no sarcasm or teasing, which happens so often, especially in this industry. I think any industry, of course, but there's a reason behind that. And it's because people are kind of subtly trying to tell somebody something because they didn't feel safe. And I honestly wish we had so much more time with you, Winn, but one of the things that I love about you as a leader is you build so much safety with people, and you don't leave it by chance for people to come to you. You've been able to do that because you built a solid, appropriate relationships with your partners and your team. And I love that about you, Winn. So as we close out this webinar series, talk about why a salon owner can't be a people pleaser, but a people challenger, I like to call it, right? Mm-hmm. Because I think sometimes people just want to be liked so much. And so talk a little bit about that, Winn, as we close this out, and any other advice that you have for salon owners.
I'm writing Jeff up on the side here. You mentioned that you thank me, or you congratulate me, or you acknowledge that I provide safety for people. Again, I don't have to have the answers. Like, for example, if somebody has a death in the family, I want to be the first person that calls them. And that doesn't mean that I have to have the right words, right? It doesn't mean that and sometimes we make things worse by thinking that we have to somehow solve the problem. The death in the family, there's something we have to solve, really? So we say stupid things like, oh, they're in a much better place, right? Oh, I know what you're feeling right now. No, those are the wrong words to say. The only words is, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And come from a genuine place. I'm so sorry for your loss. And that applies to any kind of a scenario. I'm just to be present, just to be available, just to be approachable. I don't have to have the answers, but just my presence alone, the fact that I didn't disappear, the fact that I'm available, I'm approachable, and I'm not waiting for them to come to me, I'll go to them. So I'm not, well, gosh, I'm on the beach, during COVID, they could call me if there's a problem. No, cancel the beach. I'm here. I'm present. I'm available. I'm involved. And that alone, your presence alone, is what can provide the safety for people. So hopefully that gives your listeners right now that permission to you don't have to have the answer. Just be available. Just be available right now. I just think that now, more than ever before, look at all of this as a magic moment. I think it was John DeJulius that years ago talked to me about about magic moments, where we have opportunities as leaders, and the magic moment happens when there's a crisis, right? When there's a crisis. And so a team member has a death in the family, that can be a magic moment for us to be there for them. A birthday is a magic moment. I've had team members tell me, "Winn, you remember my birthday? My mother didn't remember my birthday today." Well, first of all, I don't remember anybody's birthdays, by the way, you guys, but there's a way that somebody tells me, "Hey, by the way, today is Lori's birthday." Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to call Lori. But I set up the system to make sure that I'm doing that. But all of these are magic moments where we can establish more respect, more loyalty, more credibility if we show up the right way today, right? And by the way, you could do the opposite too. You could create more damage, and just for the simple fact that you disappear, that you're just silent, and that you're not available and approachable right now. So just this is a magic moment. It really is. We're going to come out of this stronger. You know, I don't want to go into COVID and come out unhealthy, and my relationships are damaged, and I wanted more time with my daughter, but I spent the entire time staring at social media while she was tugging on my shirt saying, "Daddy, let's go build a fort," right? You know, I want to come out of all of this stronger and better than when we went in. And to think that if we were to name, you know, COVID as well as all things Black Lives Matter, oh my gosh, that happened for a reason, right? Because there was a captive audience. There was had we all been at work in our lives as normal, business as usual, maybe we wouldn't have paid that much attention. But the fact that we were all captive, the fact that we were all at home, a captive audience, that you guys, this matters right now. There is social injustice. It happened. It happened exactly when it needed to happen, because we're all paying attention right now. We're paying attention. Okay, cool. You got my attention, and this is a magic moment for me to become a better person, a better dad, a better friend, a better leader, a better human being. And I'm going to come out stronger because of that. That's a choice that I made. That's a choice. Don't always know how. Don't always know what the solution is. Don't know where the strength is going to come from. But I made a choice that I'm going to be stronger and better because of all of this.
Yeah, amen to that, Winn. And you're right. And I've made that choice this year as well too. And I'm like, I think 2020 is our best year ever of growth. And so whatever is propelling us towards in the next 10 years, who knows? But I'm excited to find out, you know, through that process and through the lessons, just learning the lessons. So I can't thank you enough, Winn, for being on this webinar. You are absolutely amazing. I love you very much. Any last pieces of advice as we close this out?
I tell people I get emotional because, you know, I had a baby 8 years ago. So those hormones are still like, whoo.
Yes, she's amazing.
You know, just gratitude. I just want to be grateful. It's scary. It's tough. There's a lot of unknowns right now. And through all of this, I just want to hold on to gratitude. That's my word, just gratitude. Gratitude. So I'm reaching out a lot to a lot of people, and the reaching out that I'm doing mostly is just, hey, thinking about you, and I'm so glad you're in my life. That's all I'm doing.
I love that. I'm so glad you said gratitude, because that's exactly where I'm at right now. Just so much gratitude towards our team members who have stuck through this, you know, and are still around. And I just love them so much, you know, through that process. So everyone is saying thank you so much, Winn, on here. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This was powerful and exactly what I needed. So thank you, Winn. I love you.
My pleasure. I love you too.
Bye, everyone. Thanks everyone for being on.